I do think there's a case for the National Cabinet to be working these issues through and moving cautiously and appropriately, as they've been doing. We have a long way to go. We know the risk of a second wave. We know the risk of community transmission going undetected. We've seen the figures uptick in recent days in terms of the numbers of people infected every day. But nevertheless, of course, everybody wants Australia to be back at work. Everybody wants Australia, as soon as it's safe to do so, to be returning to more normal levels. I think a staged and cautious approach that governments are applying is appropriate, but that will involve, inevitably, certain easings as we go. So we look forward to the further announcements today.
Mental health is of huge concern. I know it has been a focus of yours, and I would say Minister Hunt as well. What are the experts telling you?
Look, I think that obviously there are ongoing issues even before this crisis, which were exacerbated by the bushfire crisis. There's been, as you say, an increased focus on mental health all through politics. I think one of the things that we have to do is sort of separate individual responses to this crisis. I know we're expecting further announcements, and no doubt there'll be things that we can welcome. But more broadly, we've seen the Productivity Commission reviewing the mental health. We're expecting that final report shortly. And, of course, there are calls for reforms to be made. So one of them is, for example, improving and increasing the access to counselling through mental health care plans. At the moment, you get 10 visits. There's a strong case to be looking at, say, expanding that to 20 visits more broadly, as has been done in bushfire areas, which we recommended to the government and the government adopted. That could be adopted more broadly going forward.
Are discussions underway on increasing that cap to 20?
Oh, look, certainly there's been strong calls for it, and counsellors and psychologists have made it very clear to me that in many cases 10 is not enough. 10 sessions is not enough to see somebody through their problems, their issues that they need to be helped with, and certainly an expansion to 20 would be something that I'm sure the government would be looking at, and we would very much welcome them looking at.
It's such a difficult area because counselling doesn't even really scratch the surface when it comes to some of the problems in the area of mental health. We've seen a spike in suicides. Experts say it could get a lot worse. Should we be considering something a little bit more drastic?
Well, I've said consistently, Laura, that we need a complete step change, a revolution, not an evolution, when it comes to mental health. And this will take some time to work through. We need to see the Productivity Commission's final report. We need to see the government respond to that. But look, I agree with you. If it's tinkering around the edges, if it's a few more headspace centres here or a little bit of a policy change there, that won't cut the mustard. We do have a unique opportunity here to change the national conversation around mental health. There is, I think, political will from all quarters to do so. The question will be not, though, political will, it'll be action at the end of the day. And certainly, when we see a sensible step, we'll welcome it very, very warmly. And when we think more should be done, we'll take those policies to an election and seek to do more.
The COVIDSafe app, also in your portfolio area, it cannot be made compulsory. But would you support or have a problem with employers encouraging strongly employees download the app, or perhaps retailers or business owners strongly encouraging their patrons to do so?
It's got to be voluntary in deed and in spirit, Laura. We can't have a situation where employers lean on people to do something they don't feel comfortable with. Look, we support the app. I've downloaded it. I think Labor MPs have been very supportive, more supportive than perhaps other political parties like the National Party of the app. So we want to see it work, but it must be voluntary in spirit as well as in letter. We can't have councils or other employers insisting that their employees download it. It can't be a condition of entry to anywhere. We've also raised technical concerns through the COVID-19 committee chaired by Katie Gallagher. The government has said that they are taking those concerns on board and have fixes. But it's not just the take-up rate, and we need 40% of Australians taking it up, but it's also how effective it is. You know, there are issues about how well it runs when it's in the background on different iOS operating systems. There's deep concerns that have been raised with me by the diabetic community about how it interacts with glucose monitoring apps on phones, etc. These are all issues that the government really does need to take on board and ensure that it's working properly. We know that no data has yet been shared with any state health officials, so it's not yet in effect operating in that sense. But Australians, have shown that we're all prepared right across the country to do what it takes to come together to beat COVID-19. But the app has got to be effective in reality as well as in theory.